All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. Well, guys, I just finished watching the Braves win maybe the ugliest extra innings game in the history of baseball. It was not pretty at all, but of course, you're happy that the team pulled out a win against the Toronto Blue Jays, a team itself that's really underperformed and will not be making the playoffs this year. So, it's kind of a weird, this entire season is, as you guys have walked through this season as well, is just full of really odd emotions as a fan. It's like even when this team wins, it's kind of hard to be excited about their chances, about the style of play, many offensive frustrations, opportunities wasted. But this team is still in a position to be in the playoffs. They're jockeying for that final wild card with the New York Mets. But man, a lot of ugly games from the offense, and it's night and day because the pitching staff, other than kind of a random ugly start from Spencer Schwellenbach last night, Saturday night, has been really good, and it's just been the offense has been really bad, really an imbalanced roster right now, and it's beating a dead horse. We all know, in large part, is because of injuries, but the underperformance is still real from the guys that are left, and that's just the reality of things. Let's get to some Braves news first, and then we'll dive into this episode. Whit Merrifield, another injury, right? The latest Brave to go down. He fouls a ball off the top of his foot, gets an X-ray, fractured foot. Initially, it looks like he's out 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, this is absurd. This is laughable at this point. But a little bit of good news. It looks like he may only miss about a week, maybe even a little less than that. It's basically he's not going to do any more damage to the bone. It's just how much pain can he play through. The little bit I've seen of Whit Merrifield, I think he's a gamer. He's probably going to grit through the pain. We'll see if he can be effective in doing that. But I think he'll be back pretty soon. It at least sounds like. This, of course, was right after he came back after getting beamed in the back of the head by a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. So even just that shows you this is a tough guy. I think he's going to be back. I'm going to spend the second half of this episode talking about Merrifield and some of his comments that he made after he got hit in the head. So if that interests you, awesome. But I'm going to leave that to the second half of this episode. Meanwhile, we'll obviously talk about the Braves as a whole in the first half. Merrifield out. I mean, right now it's still a little uncertain, but it looks like it won't be super long. But in the meantime, the Braves did add some depth with Cavan Biggio. They went out and acquired him from the Giants. I actually didn't even know Biggio was with the Giants. He spent the early part of his career, which looked pretty promising, with the Blue Jays, ironically, who the Braves, of course, just finished playing. He eventually got shipped off with several years, actually, of underperformance of his own, and he really has not been able to reclaim some of that early success that he had in his career. So it's actually been pretty ugly from Biggio. He's kind of a big name, especially because of his Hall of Fame father, but I don't know that he's even going to see the field. I think we'll just see how long Merrifield is out. Right now, the Braves have been rolling with Luke Williams, who has gotten a whole lot more playing time for the 2024 Braves than I ever thought possible. That's for sure. So, all right, let's look into where the Braves are right now. So, after an ugly 9-5 loss Saturday against the Blue Jays, Schwellenbach, who has been really, really good this year for the Braves, just did not have it in that game. And it's just kind of another low point for the Braves, right? It's an ugly loss. You're really never in the game. The Mets, meanwhile, yesterday just continue to roll 9 straight wins, and the Mets took a 1-game lead in the wild card with that win. And you're just like, I mean, I look across to the Mets, and you think they had zero magic. They had nothing happening for them last year, a lot of injuries of their own. And a 9-game winning streak is what I've been hoping for and praying for the Braves the entire season. And they just have proven to really be incapable of that kind of run. Meanwhile, the Mets are doing it. And they earn a 1-game lead in the wild card over the Braves with that. So after that downer Saturday, the Braves do come back and win, like I said, an ugly game today, Sunday, uh, against Toronto, and they get that game back. The Mets lose 3-1 to the Reds. So thankfully, the Mets winning streak is over. The Braves get back on the horse and win a game of their own, and here we are tied once again with the final spot in the wild card between these two rival teams. You know, the Mets are doing what I would love the Braves to do: go on a run, go on any kind of winning streak. Braves, for this back end of the season, and obviously they would put themselves in a much better chance of making the playoffs with that kind of run. Even give me a 5-game winning streak. It doesn't have to be 9. Give me any kind of winning streak. I'd love that. I'm talking kind of negative. Look, the Braves are 13-7 in their last 20. It's not as if they haven't played decent baseball. They've won games. They have found ways to win low scoring games. But it's still you just even the way they're winning is just really ugly. And obviously a win's a win. But yeah, a sustained winning streak would do wonders for this team. Not only maybe making the playoffs, but also psychologically. But this Braves team, I think one of the most frustrating things about this entire season for me, actually, and this might sound kind of weird, it's not how they've lost games, it's actually how they've won games. They win games in really uninspiring ways. Even their wins, like technically today's win was a walk-off, but did you feel awesome about that walk-off? I mean, a dribbler up the middle, Eli White, he did a great job of breaking on that ball right away and scoring with his speed. But even most of their walk-off wins are just uninspiring. It's like there's no magic. I think that's the word that I keep coming back to with this team. There doesn't seem to be a lot of magic to this team, and there seemed to be a lot. Obviously, there was a ton in 2021, especially in the back half of the year in the playoffs. But even last year, throughout, I know it ended badly, but throughout the season, it just were so many great moments. And from a sports psychology standpoint, that matters, right? Uh, this team just does not seem capable of getting the big hit in the big moment. Time and time again, they've kind of failed to do it. And that really does matter, not just for the wins, but that psychological aspect of knowing that you can do it, knowing as a team that you can come through in the big moments. And it's like if you never come up big in those big moments, that belief that you can do it, it really diminishes. It just feels that way. Now, the ironic thing is this team actually has a great record in extra inning games. They've won 12 games, more than any other team in extra inning games. But I really think has a lot more to do with Raisel Iglesias and then just leaning on him hard versus any kind of magic that the offenses has done. I mean, they've come through enough, but again, the magic doesn't seem like it's really there. Now, I'm not saying that in a way that like, do I think that means they won't make the playoffs? No, not necessarily. Again, their pitching might just carry them, put the entire team on Chris Sale's back and Iglesias is back and just carry them into the playoffs. Maybe that's exactly what happens. But it's not a very fun way to watch baseball with an offense that just is so incapable. So it's it it impacts their belief in their own ability to come through. It also is not a fun way to watch baseball, and look no further from the lack of excitement that this team has generated than with the diminishing attendance. I mean, I'm watching games now. I remember last year. I mean, every game, Truist Park was packed out. It was rocking. And this year, not only is attendance clearly down, probably as low as it's been in quite a few years, but uninspired. I mean, just fans, and I don't blame any of the fans, right? They just sit. There's not a lot of cheering. I mean, when's the last time you guys heard, the chop really like organically being, shouted out? When's the last time they turn off the lights and the cell phones go on and you chop and you root for that reliever who's exiting the game and none of that. I don't even remember the last time that happened in a game in Atlanta. So it's just felt so flat. And look, I don't want to be like a super downer about this after a win, but it's just, man, it feels, as a fan, it feels just like probably what the team feels like. You're just grinding your way through the rest of this season. So this Braves offense, it just is anemic. It is inconsistent, and they can't get the timely hit. And since they scored 11 runs on August 17th against the Angels, since that date, the Braves, hey, they're 13-7 since then. I mean, they've won games, but they're averaging 3.8 runs per game, so under 4 a game. And that's with, they had like, if you remember that Minnesota series, there's 3 games where they scored, I think, 6 or more runs in all 3 games. So that's with those games included. So it kind of, buoys that a little bit more. But yeah, 3.8 runs per game, and that's 20 games worth. In the meantime, the Mets are 14-6, and obviously a 9-game winning streak in the middle of that. So they're only 1 game better than the Braves during that time, but they're scoring 4.5 runs per game. They're doing it much more in a balanced way, offense and pitching. And so the Braves obviously are just leaning on pitching. That's the positive piece of this is the Braves pitching has been so good. And I do want to talk about that some, but yeah, I mean, the offense is just, it has to be better the rest of the way. It just has to be. Matt Olson goes through these little hills and valleys. I mean, big valleys, but these little spikes where he looks like he's back, and it just doesn't last very long. Soler has not been good since he's joined the Braves. He had 1 great series in Colorado, and probably a lot of it has to do with this hamstring issue because Snitker's pulling him after basically 6 innings every game. So it makes you think, yeah, there must be something still barking with that hammy and maybe affecting his swing. But even then you're like, well, sit him out for a week and let's get him healthy again. But all that being said, you just not having guys in the middle of your order come through consistently, other than of course Marcell Ozuna. Michael Harris is still hitting the ball hard occasionally. Kelenic has had a couple home runs lately. He's gotten a little more play, so that's been good. But yeah, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys how bad this offense has been. The other thing that I'm frustrated with, and the Braves have kind of been able to overcome it at times, but Snitker's incessant use of pinch runners in close games, taking Soler out of the game, and even today taking Marcell Ozuna out of the game for a pinch runner, it really almost came back to bite the Braves. And quite honestly, I just would say they were lucky that they were able to win this game and win it. I mean, they had an infield single from Arcia. They had another infield tough play that turned into an error off of the bat of Duvall. Just like multiple things that happened that were to their favor, that just these guys are coming up in crunch time situations over and over again because they're the pinch runner and then they have to stay in the game, and your biggest bats are out of the game, and it just makes 0 sense to me. It would make more sense to me to pinch run when you have a team that's really good at small ball, and you just know that if you get a speedy runner on, you're going to be able to get them over and get them in, and it's kind of like a guaranteed run. But obviously with this team, that is not the case. So it's great to get a speedier runner on for a Soler or for an Ozuna, but I just don't know how big of an advantage it is. Now, Soler not being in the outfield defensively, I think that's a little better case to make, but it seems like Snitker pulls him out too early, where you just don't know if you're still in the game or not, or if you're going to need his bat in extra innings. So I think they were very fortunate today, Sunday's game, to walk off this game with a win. So yes, the Braves are leaning very heavily on a very good starting rotation and Raisel Iglesias. I mean, that's basically the name of the game right now. The offense, like I said, averaging 3.8 runs over that 13-7 stretch. It's kind of amazing. You're 13-7, and that's all about the pitching. They've only allowed 3 runs flat, 3.0 runs per game during this time. So the pitching as a whole has been excellent, but really it's all anchored by the starting pitching. The bullpen hasn't had to pitch very often. We haven't had to see, a Luke Jackson or, the guys more at the bottom of that bullpen very often. And then again, Iglesias has been so dominant. He won reliever of the year for August, and he's just continued it on through September. So he's been able to come in at the end of the game, and he's also, like I mentioned, he's another reason they've been able to cover up some, I think, bad decisions by Snicker, with just Iglesias dominating in extra innings and figuring out a way to just get a run or two when they need it. But of course, all that being said, I mean, there are multiple impacts to this offense not scoring. And in one way that I'm a little concerned about, is as dominant and awesome as Iglesias has been, is just overuse. I mean, the Braves have had, he comes in, like today, he comes in the 10th. He shuts down the Blue Jays. The Braves can't score in the bottom of the 10th. And of course, it forces him to go out for another inning. And thankfully, they're able to walk it off in the 11th, but there's just another inning that Iglesias has to cover, and that's not the first time it's happened. It's actually happened quite often recently, where Iglesias is pitching more than one inning per outing, and it adds up over time. And Jimenez has had a lot of use too, and he allowed that 2-run shot for the Blue Jays to go up in the 8th inning today. So you just worry about those two particularly. Tons of use. The Braves they have to play them. They have to throw their best guys because it's a sprint to the finish. But it's tough. It's tough. Now, if you're looking for silver linings to this whole thing, is like every game to this point on is a must-win game for the Braves. We have seen this be very beneficial to teams that have to play this way. Like every game is a playoff game all the way up to the end of the year, and they just carry it over into the playoffs. And maybe that'll happen for the Braves, but of course you got to get there first. And the Mets are playing so well that it makes you wonder if the Braves can muster enough of a run in these last 19 games to overtake the Mets. So it just reminds me, the expectations on this team have totally changed. In spring training, it was World Series or bust. Strider goes down on us immediately, and that kind of, buckles your knees. And then speaking of knees, Ronald Acuna, of course, his knee goes out soon after, right? And then now you're just in survival mode. And Riley goes out, and now you're really in survival mode, to the point where people outside the Braves organization are like, yeah, this team's not making the playoffs. They're not good enough. Well, still, here they are, fighting for this last wild card spot, and it's such a change in expectations that now you just feel like if this team even makes the playoffs, it's a tremendous achievement. And I do kind of feel that way now. If this team misses the playoffs, the emotions are going to be weird. Of course, there'll be disappointment. I'm a fan of them. I want them to make it. But I also will kind of understand, like there's certain players who've really underperformed and haven't been injured that I'll be frustrated with, and I won't be happy with. And Matt Olson, and you can throw a few names out there, Sean Murphy, and some guys that you just wish would play better. Jorge Soler, since he's been with the Braves. But as a group, you just feel like if you guys make the playoffs, I mean, good on you, because this has been a tough year. So that being said, it's a hard brand of baseball to watch. An offense that constantly doesn't get the runner in from third, who doesn't come up with the big hit very often. It's one run here, one run there. An early couple runs are scored, and they don't score the entire rest of the game. It's that sort of stuff that's just tough to watch. And again, I think that's one of the reasons why not as many fans are coming out to the games right now. And I'm sure the Braves are very aware of that. And it's really hard as a Braves fan to watch, knowing that the Phillies are going to win the division and the Mets have a possibility of knocking you out of the final spot. So gosh, if that happens, yeah, it would really, really stink. One more silver lining that gives the Braves a little more hope going into these last 19 games. The Mets have the third toughest schedule remaining. They play the Phillies several times. They have most of their games are against winning teams, including 3 against the Braves. Of course, that's the second to last series of the season, and it's in Atlanta. So if the Braves can play decently through the rest of the season leading up to that series, if you can go into that series with a 1 or 2 game lead, okay, now you have a shot within that series to knock the Mets out and just put them to bed and go into the playoffs. And then your last series against the Royals doesn't even matter. That would be great. The way this season has gone is probably not going to go that way. It might go the opposite way, and you're fighting for your life. But we'll obviously just have to wait on that. It could be, and it very likely will be, that series will be a winner-take-all kind of situation. I really do think this pitching staff's just going to have to carry the load and carry the rest of the offensive guys across the finish line. If they do that, and they're grizzled and they're hardened, maybe they can make a run in the playoffs, but they got to get there first. So I'll be watching. I really appreciate you guys tuning into another episode of Stay the Braves. I'll talk to you soon.